Hello, my name is Gabby Gomer, and today I'll be talking to you about interstate relationships. So, what exactly is interstate relationships? So, interstate relationships describes how states interact with each other. So, throughout this unit, have been talking about federalism. That's what this unit is on. And federalism, we said, was kind of like it described the relationship between the national and state government. Well, one of the aspects of federalism is that the states have relationships with each other as well. So before the Constitution, the 13 colonies were more like 13 different mini countries. They did what benefited their state, not the nation as a whole. They didn't respect each other. They didn't work together in any form or fashion. It was like having 13 different countries. But now that the Constitution has been created, the framers laid out certain obligations that they have to each other. And these obligations include full faith and credit, privileges and immunities, extradition, and interstate compacts. And I'm going to go into further detail throughout this PowerPoint about each one of those. So the first one is full faith and credit. Full faith and credit just means that states must recognize other states' laws and official documents. This is outlined in Article 4, Section 1. And some examples of this would be like if I have an Alabama driver's license and I drive to Tennessee, Tennessee has to recognize that even though my driver's license is not a Tennessee driver's license, it is a valid driver's license. If we were talking about divorce papers, if a man lived in Florida with his wife and they got divorced and he moved to New York and wanted to get remarried, New York would have to recognize that his divorce in Florida was valid and he's allowed to get remarried. If I went to Maryland and adopted a child and moved to Kansas, Kansas would have to recognize that my adoption of that child is real and I am the guardian of him. The next one of these obligations is privileges and immunities. This one basically says that the rules of the state apply to everyone in the state, whether they are citizen or just a guest. This is lined out in Article 4, Section 2. So I think the best example of this is the drinking age. So for the purpose of the example, let's say that I'm an 18-year-old. I live in Alabama, and the drinking age is 19 in Alabama. But let's say the drinking age in Georgia is 18. If I went to Georgia, I would be allowed to drink because I am 18 and the drinking age is 18 over there. Even though I am a citizen of Alabama and Alabama's drinking age is 19. And the same thing the opposite way. If an 18-year-old from Georgia goes to Alabama to visit, they're not allowed to drink there because the drinking age is 19. So the states have to recognize each other's laws and they have to allow for the privileges of other states, but they don't have to enforce other states' laws. Then the speeding tickets. If I went to Mississippi and I was driving faster on the interstate and I got pulled over by a cop, they would not be legally allowed to charge me more for just because I am not a citizen of Mississippi. The only exception to this rule would be colleges, and the reason why this is considered to be an exception is because the money that you get for paying out-of-state tuition is said to be the taxes that the citizens of that state have been paying that the person who is not a citizen of that state has not been paying. The next obligation states have to each other is extradition. Extradition says that if I commit a crime in Alabama and I flee to Florida, Florida has to return me to Alabama. So it would be just be that. If I killed a man in Alabama and then I ran to Florida and I got stopped by the Florida police for speeding and they realized that I was the killer, Florida wouldn't be the one to punish me. They would have to send me back to Alabama so that I could get punished. And the last one of these obligations is interstate compacts. So interstate compacts are agreements between states to settle disagreements and to just increase in cooperation between the states without having to bring in the army. when these agreements are made, first off, they cannot be secret. Second off, Congress must approve them. And if needed, Congress will provide a federal mediator. Most of the time, the Supreme Court will mediate these kind of disputes. Agreements most commonly include use of precious resources, such as water. I know there was a recent dispute that's still going on today about the Tennessee River that flows through Georgia, Alabama, and Florida, and whether Georgia has the right to dam it or not. Another type of agreement that is made is over environmental cleanup. There's also emergency assistance for bordering states and social services. So those are typically what the agreements are talking about in general. So now that we've gone over the obligations of each state, at the end of our notes there were a couple of questions to be considered, and I want to go through what I thought of these questions and for you to consider them as well. So, is the obligation of full faith and credit workable in the 21st century, or should issues like marriage and licensing be uniform and nationalized? I personally think that marriage and licensing should be uniform and nationalized because we are one country and people shouldn't feel confined to a state because of something like marriage. I believe that they should be able to travel freely within the states. This isn't Europe where it's just different countries joined together. This is the United States of America. We are all one country. The next question is, do you think that fugitives requested under extradition requirement should be given an option to fight their extradition, or should it be automatic? Well, I think that since these people are fugitives, their punishments and location should be decided by the states. So it should be automatic unless a state governor has an issue with it. So I basically believe that the fugitive shouldn't really have a say on whether or not they get out of their punishment in a certain state. And the last question to consider is, if the states are unable to agree with one another, when disputes arise, is it better for the courts to rule or for the states to reach an agreement? I think that the states should definitely try to solve it themselves, because this is a states between states relationship, not a national between state relationship. But I think if it gets out of hand to the point to where there's a war going to become between states, the Supreme Court should get involved. So that is interstate relationships. I hope you enjoyed and got a good bit of information out of this video.